Hey, welcome back. It's been a little while since we've done a build video, so I thought this time I'd go over my free-to-play walker build. I'm also trying something a little new out. I've got a camera so you can actually see me and my face. Not sure why you would want to, but maybe it'll make it a little more interesting. So the 13th anniversary is here. They gave out these T5 coupons, but no T6 coupon this year, so I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. This is on my free-to-play account as well, so just going over, I don't think this build is really going to surprise anyone, but for my event campaign choice, I chose the Zal Heavy Cruiser, of course, for the Invincible trait, and then my second choice was the Walker. And part of the reason I chose the Walker is it is actually an Intel and pilot ship. So we'll get to that in a moment, but it's a pretty decent ship all around. It has a pretty decently high hull modifier, 5.3 weapon layout, and reasonably agile as well. I'd call it more of a, a light cruiser, heavy fighter kind of thing. It probably isn't going to beat a really high speed escort in like a 1v1 situation, but it can do very good reliable damage. It can stay alive very well. It's a decent ship, and I'll put some combat footage at the end of the video as well. So starting off on the gear, I have the Discovery wide-angle dual beam bank, of course, 3 Agony phaser arrays because I just already had those, and the advanced piezo polaron beam, and that is for the technical overload. In the rear is a crafted phaser omni and the inhibiting phaser omni. Its proc chances are so ridiculously small, but this does have a 2.5% chance for engines offline, so that's better than the trilithium one, which grants a little bit of haste, I felt. And the dark matter quantum torpedo is mounted in the rear, and the reason for that is to complete the two-piece with the forward phaser wide-angle dual beam bank, because you'll notice I do not have Lorca's fire controls on this build, and the reason for that is it's T6X'd, and I only have 4 console slots that I can put tactical consoles in. And I felt that doing 3 tactical colony consoles and 1 being lost to Lorca's wasn't worth having, some random array or something in the rear. You can't have a 3rd omnidirectional array anyway. I guess except for the kinetic cutting beam. This is the same kind of layout that I did on the Legendary Defiant video. But that ship had more tactical consoles. This one you're kind of limited in this respect, so I filled all 4 of those with that, and to keep the 25% crit severity here, I just put the torpedo in the rear. The rest of my layout, I've got the fleet colony deflector for more criticals and the 3-piece competitive. Elsewhere, I'm using the bolstered warp core that increases exotic damage resistance, which includes stuff like electrical and radiation damage, which is really popular. You could also do the other one, the innervated, which grants you a higher resistance to control effects. Kind of depends on who you're fighting there. And of course the fortified shield, I think that 20% extra hull capacity is more beneficial than any of the other shield variants. And that does leave the deflector open for kind of playing around with other options. You could do the Gem Hadar deflector for better perception, or you could switch to the competitive deflector, which the 4-piece isn't very good, but that lets you use something else like the temporal warp core, which has the built-in teleport, 1 more escape to get out of trouble. There's lots of options for that section. Now, I already talked about my tactical consoles, colony consoles, of course, and then I'll just go through the engineering consoles. I have hull image refractors. That's for the overflow temporary HP. A Pax Triburnium that increases my hull capacity as well as gives me a decent base resist to all of the standard energy types. And the nice thing about something like this, a console like this or a trait like this, is this resistance is on all the time. So even if you get nuked or something like that and your buffs are gone, you still have this sort of backup resist. Obfuscation screen, of course, is the console that comes on this ship. Very, very useful for getting out of trouble, as well as some bonus damage when you come out of it, up to 120% for 20 seconds, which is really powerful. And then I have two kind of emergency consoles, Warp Burst Capacitor, which basically jumps you ahead 6 kilometers and makes you untargetable for 5 seconds, along with some bonus damage, but that's not really that noticeable because it's so short. It's mainly useful for getting out of parasitic ice or plasma storms, other stuff like that. And then I have shared processing integration. This one is a decently sized heal and resistance. It's probably not the best console for this scenario, but it's cheap and easy to get, so that's why I grabbed it. I've got a little selection of other consoles that I've acquired over time on this, but what you use there probably depend on what you already have. You could use the fluidic phase decoupler, for example, as another escape. And then my science consoles are kind of on the more offensive side. I'm using the enhanced induction coils. You can get this console for free if you made a Klingon recruit account-wide, or you can get it off of one of those like tier 3 or tier 4 ships for dilithium. It's not very expensive, so there's not really any reason not to grab one of these. And the reason for that is I don't max out my weapon power on this build, and I'm not using emergency power to weapons, so when I hit this console, it does give me a nice hefty boost. They're 135 weapon power for 30 seconds, and it only has a 60-second cooldown. And that lasts 30 seconds only if you have the battery expertise in the skill tree, so make sure you take that battery expertise if you're going to use that console. It's just, really useful to have. Then hostile acquisition, it's cheap. It gives you 30 accuracy and 30 control as well as a hold. So that's a great one. And then I have the Bozeman on this character, so I have Tachyon net drones, which gives me a little bit more crit and perception, as well as a debuff and shield offline effect. If you don't have this, there's lots of other offensive options. Maybe you could even use something like a Cars, which does a pretty big electrical damage hit, just to supplement your spike damage, or another defensive console. It's really up to you. Or parasitic ice even. I mean, the more ice, the better as far as slowing down enemy ships. I'm using just kind of a generic balanced skill tree. I am still going to do that skill tree video, so keep an eye out for that. And then at the moment, I have command as my primary, and that's mostly for boost morale, which clears all of my debuff and control effects. And then I have strategist as my secondary, and the reason for that is while I'm threatening, I gain additional hull healing, and it also turns some incoming hull healing into temporary hull. Lately, the hull image refractors console was changed so that the maximum amount of healing overflow from that console alone is the same as whatever hull's on your ship. So right now I have 129,000 hull. It would be 129,000 temporary hull, but this 30% of extra temporary hull from strategist is separate from the hull image refractor's temporary hull. So that means that you can get an additional 10 stacks of some kind of temporary hull, and you could exceed, in this case, 129,000. In combat, I probably hit a maximum temporary hull of closer to 150 or 155,000. And then add even more to that, because obviously I'll have threatening stance on, which is another 50% to my maximum base hull. So you're looking at a ship that probably has around 200,000 hull at any given point in combat. Maybe a bit more than that if you include all that other temporary hull stuff. So super good. As for traits, I'll go through my personal traits first. I have Give Your All, which is the engineering R&D, dodge damage, very good. The Fleet Coordinator, that's 10% bonus damage when you're in a team. If you're not in a team, then you could drop this and slot something like Beam Training, or the Superior Beam Training if you have that, or something else that does damage. I have Pseudo-Submission, that's a Placate. Intelligent Agent Attaché, that allows me to use my captain abilities more frequently. And this one's really, really important, especially as a science captain, for using my subnuke more often, or even my co-opt energy weapons, which is a great survivability clicky. I have Smuggler's Luck. When any shield facing is depleting, it gives you immunity to control for 10 seconds. That includes placates, as well as slows and holds and other things like that. So that's really useful, especially if, say, a science ship, holds me down and I'm in trouble, and an escort flies in and pew pew pew, my shield facing drops. All of a sudden, I'm free for a few seconds to get out of trouble. So That's a really nice one to have, even with the 60-second cooldown. Fresh from R&R, that lets me use my team abilities more quickly. Reconstructive Radiation, so now that Hull Image Refractors doesn't have a 20 stack thing anymore, there's no conflicts with having any kind of multiple sources of healing. So Reconstructive Radiation, that's pretty much constant healing, especially against anybody that's using Soliton Impeller or any science ships using secondary deflectors that are dealing radiation damage. You're just constantly healing. I have Self-Modulating Fire, 50% shield pen. Yeah, it's only 10 seconds, but it can really help your initial spike damage against someone. And then I have Redirected Armor Plating from that Zenkethi mission, just as kind of a backup of resistances. You could drop this and maybe add more damage. Or if you have Boimler effect, you put that in here. I just don't have that on this character, free to play and all that. Secret Command Codes is my last one. I picked this one up. Someone listed it right at 15 million, which is the EC cap that I have on this character, so I bought that. And again, similar to Reconstructive Radiation, anytime you get any control or subsystem offline effect, which is all the time in PvP, if you get placated, this triggers as well. 1500 HP per second for 10 seconds, so that's a sizable chunk, and every 30 seconds, plus damage resistance and resistance to those confuses, disables, holds, placates, etc. So that's actually a really good trait to have. On my starship traits, of course, Rhythmic Rumble is here. This ship has pilot, so I basically don't make any sacrifices in order to run this, and it gets me a sizable amount of damage resistance as well as reduced weapon cost, especially at the high speeds that we're seeing in PvP. Superior Pedal to the Metal. I spent a lot of time grinding on the Temporal Recruit character for this trait, and that's 30% total bonus damage, so that's good. Concealed Repairs is here as another emergency heal. I mean, I'd rather be alive than dead, but obviously you could drop this for something that increases more damage, or maybe the ideal trait to go in this slot, like if I could afford another Lobi ship, I'd probably grab the Adaleth, which extends the duration of beam overload to 15 seconds, so essentially you could have constant beam overload. As it stands right now, I have 10 seconds of beam overload, and then there's a 5-second gap before I get my next beam overload, and that's not ideal. So that's probably like long-term goal for this character, is eventually I want to add that trait, and probably will replace Concealed Repairs with that. Invincibles from the Zal Heavy Cruiser, which is the other Lobi ship that I chose with my event campaign choice last year. Cold-Hearted I got from the Plesh Trawl Raider, thanks to an Epic Phoenix token, which is the only one I've ever gotten on this character, but it worked out nicely. Cold-Hearted is extremely effective, especially against enemies that don't have temporary hull. Like most science ships and most healers don't have that. So this can be really good, and it benefits your entire team. If everybody's attacking the same target, you're getting a negative 50 debuff on them with this. It helps out your whole team. And then Temporal Surge from the Bozeman as well, which was my other ship choice. 100% crit chance and some speed and turn strength, really good both defensively and offensively. My reputation traits, I'm a little bit defensive. I have the bonus all damage resistance rating trait, of course, helps me exceed 75% in damage resistance. And then I also am using the automated protomatter conduits, which is a 125% hull regen for 15 seconds every 30 seconds. So basically half uptime on a really large amount of hull regen. Tyler's Duality. On a ship like this with so much temporary hull and so much base hull to begin with, this is a lot of crit chance. I do hit this maximum, or I get very close to the maximum in combat. Precision is another 5% crit chance, and then the 20% crit severity from advanced targeting systems. Now, some other options to consider are counter stroke. When you are affected by a control, you get this huge over 40% crit severity boost, but it only lasts 5 seconds, so it's a little situational. And critical deflection is really good from a defensive standpoint. And one other one I see people not using as much lately, and it's one of the best ones, is Viral Engine Overload. Knocking engines offline and slowing down your target this frequently, every 30 seconds, is really, really effective, especially because there doesn't seem to be any kind of like lockout or timeout on doing it. So if you have a team of 5 and everybody's using this, as long as you're not all hitting at exactly the same time, then you're frequently slowing down your enemy, and that's really effective. My active ones, I have the anti-time. This is mostly for this tiny 12.5% chance to hold for a few seconds against players. It's a really short hold, but it's something. Sensor interference, of course, negative 79% all outgoing damage to any enemy within 10 kilometers of the platform. So if you're in trouble, drop this and then stay close to it. Force challenge is really good for grabbing people, and it doesn't say on the tooltip here, but when you force challenge someone, it also applies the same effect as a hold. So it locks out their trays, kind of messes up their cycles and that sort of thing, and can be really useful. And quantum singularity manipulation can be used defensively. You get this 5 seconds of a perfect cloak, which is infinite stealth cloak. You can't be targeted during that 5 seconds. You can still be damaged if you like fly through a gravity well and it's just dealing AoE damage, but it's useful. But also this 125 to science stats, that includes control, drain, as well as perception, like for targeting other stealth ships. So yeah, it's every 5 minutes, but you know, it's better than nothing. And then the other ones, I don't talk about these as much, but tethered asteroid. This prevents people from using pilot maneuvers when they're close to you, which is kind of nice for like maybe 1v1s or something. And the Tetrion one, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but you'd be surprised how useful it is if you time it at the right moment, just that little extra of spike damage. So, okay, so the really highlight important part is to talk about the ship stations. As I'm sure is a surprise to no one, my tactical seat is Tactical Team, Scatter Volley 1, and Beam Overload 3. Of course, Scatter Volley is just there to trigger colony consoles and heal. I'm not actually dealing any damage with turrets or cannons or anything like that. And Tac Team, it's good for distributing shields and stuff, but it does cause overload misfires and that sort of thing. So you could do Chemosite Lace Weaponry and deal a little bit more damage and debuff that way. So I might grab a copy of that, but I still... Okay, I did get my Romulans. I forgot where I left off here. I did get my Romulan tactical officers, so I was holding off for a while on grabbing Chemosite because I didn't want to train a Jem'Hadar officer if I didn't need to. The ship does have an Intel seat, but it's only an ensign, so I just put Intel Team 1 there, and I'm trying to use it as frequently as possible, but since it's the only copy, it is hard to get it at the minimum of 10 seconds, but it's worth slotting over other things. Like, I could put Evade Target Lock there, but the untargetable duration for Evade Target Lock is only 3.7 seconds, which is so short. And I'd rather have the additional perception and stealth from Intel Team, so that's my choice there. And the pilot seat, which is also in this universal seat, I have Pilot Team 1, and the reason for that is the immunity to movement debuffs. I know it says only 2 seconds, but don't treat it as like immunity while a pilot team is on. It's more like a clear. So like you get hit with a Chronoton torpedo and you're slow, you hit pilot team, and the Chronoton torpedo effect is gone. So that's really useful. A little bit of extra speed and maneuverability on a ship that isn't as fast and maneuverable as other light ships. It's nice to have. Another alternative that I'll mention is if you use this seat, and I'm using it as a Romulan tactical so I could get that crit, but now that Romulans you can get any career type, you could put an engineering team here and then slot reverse shield polarity on the engineering seat. But I find that pilot team is more useful to have that constant uptime of just cycling that ability. And that plays into the duty officers that I have as well, so I'll get to that in a second. I'm running Lambda 2, of course, for additional perception and accuracy, which is really important, especially since I don't have like the Juggernaut trait or some other accuracy boosts like Lobi consoles and that kind of thing. So having Lambda in combination with Intel Team 1, that right there is another 600 perception. which is a pretty sizable amount of perception for targeting other stealth users. On the engineering seat, I have emergency power to engines 1. Of course, speed is really important. Engineering team 2, that's for healing and clearing subsystem offlines and debuffs like the Oxysif Placate. Emergency power to shields 3, and some of that plays in, if I look at my power levels here, some of that plays into when I use that enhanced induction coils console, my shield power is still only at 50. But if I add shields 3, it's up to 91. All of my power levels are very, very high during combat. And the additional 30% shield resistance does help keep me alive a bit longer. But you could swap this out for emergency power to Aux 3, which would not only increase my perception by an additional 500, basically making this very effective against Exodus users. It also gives me an additional 100 stealth for a little bit more defense. And then in the commander seat, I'm using Aux to Structural Integrity Field 3. That's for not only the heal and the resistance rating, but it triggers my competitive engines every 10 seconds. If I didn't have the Placate Duty Officer, or if I was doing something else, I probably would slot Reverse Shield Polarity 3 here instead, and then switch this Engineering Team 2 for Oxysif, and then I would put my Engineering Team where Pilot Team was instead, if that makes sense. My Science seat, I've got Photonic Officer 2. That is for the cooldowns as best as I can get them on this kind of build. Science Team 1 for clearing debuffs. And Tractor Beam Repulsors, and Repulsors is mainly for getting out of parasitic ice and other holds. You can just hit that, and it pushes the ice away from you, and it breaks you out of it. Another alternative you could do is maybe switch this for Science Team 2 and then go to Tractor Beam 1. And you could use that Tractor Beam as another measure against Exodus users, but I find a lot of time that using Tractor Beam, as soon as they're outside of 5 kilometers of you, the effect is no longer, like visually, it's still on the ship, but it's not actually affecting them anymore. They can still hit Intel Team and all that stuff. So it's just really hard to use. You have to time it really, really precisely. And sometimes it's just hard to focus with so much going on. I'd rather just have repulsors and click that when I'm in trouble. So last thing is the duty officers. I have the evasive maneuvers cooldown, of course, a 20 of 47 for the additional weapon accuracy. And since I do have the pilot seat, I do have a chance to get the armor pen of 50. And I did test this, and I'm sorry to report it is not 50 armor pen. It is 50 hull pen, which is 5 armor pen. So a little bit disappointing, but still really good duty officer. I have the Oxysif Placate officer, which I grabbed off the exchange for some lucky low price. I understand these are really expensive on console, so you could use the auxiliary to dampers officer instead, this guy, when you, because it extends the duration of oxidampers as well. This actually stacks twice, because you can use oxidamp every 10 seconds and each one lasts 20, so 2 stacks, right? That's 70 energy damage resistance from oxidampers. So that's kind of nice. You could use that guy. Then I have a Work Core Engineer to clear all debuffs when using my emergency power abilities. And then the last 2 seats, and this is mainly because I don't have Boimler effect on this character, but I'm using a 47 of 47 and a 35 of 47, both of which I picked up. I just kind of watched the exchange hoping I could spot one for a low price. And basically 35 of 47 is doing the bulk of the work here, but I'm hoping that this will help my cooldowns and I can get these abilities down to their minimums well enough that Intel Team is every 10 seconds and Pilot Team is every 10 seconds and so on. So that's kind of how it goes there. And then real quick, I just want to do a little status update on this character, sort of show, I really haven't played that much lately. I've been kind of busy with real life stuff. And this character still has accumulated quite a bit of stuff. I do log in occasionally and I do my endeavors. My endeavor rank is over 100 now on this character, so that's really nice. So I'm up to, thanks to the account bank, you know, EC, I still have the EC cap of 15 million on this character, so it does kind of limit what I can buy. I keep hoping that they will remove the EC cap limit for all accounts, which is why I'm hesitant to actually buy the one in the store. I don't want to pay, I think it was 375 Zen when it was on sale a week or two ago. I don't want to pay 375 Zen, which is really hard to earn, and then have them just be like, oh, no more cap anymore. So I'm just kind of trying to survive with the EC cap right now. But I do have 94 million, not really sure what to spend it on at this point. And a little while back they did this sale where all the duty officer packs, promo packs were really cheap. So I have these 4 promo packs. I can't actually sell them because they are worth more than my EC cap. And same thing with these 10 keys that I bought. I guess I could sell the keys one at a time, and then I'd just have to log in and move my EC from the account bank to here. But I'm mostly holding on to these. I think I'm going to try in the trading channel to see if I could trade these and the keys and then maybe this EC and grab like the Adaleth that I mentioned earlier. And I do have some Lobby, so I'm kind of tempted to just open these keys. I doubt I'd actually get anything good from the keys, but if I could hit 160 Lobby, then the next Lobby sale I could also buy a Lobby console, maybe like Ultimate Swarmer, that's another 35 accuracy, would be kind of nice to have on this character. So, and then of course there's the T5 coupon they gave out, and I have also been diligently putting dilithium up. This is nice, I got another 124. And when these go through, which is going to be a while, because I just put in that one today. And the last one was the 19th, and then before that, the 11th. Oh, and this one, yeah. So it's going to be a little while before I get this Zen, but when these orders complete, and I redeem all this, that's 2,400 Zen, which is enough to buy a T6 ship on sale. And the ship that I'm thinking probably is going to be the Somerville for the Spore-Infused Anomalies trait. It's just a really powerful trait. It does a drain, it does electrical damage, and on the free-to-play Scryer build that I did a video on before, I'm going to throw that trait on there, and that ship will be even more effective. I would really like, I mean, I didn't make it in time for this mud sale, but I would really like to get the Kulash frigate. The invasive maneuvers trait is really, really awesome. And I just like the ship a lot too. I just think it's a cool ship, but it's 4250, so that would take substantially longer. If they had given out a T6 coupon as part of the 13th anniversary, then I probably would use the T6 coupon on the Somerville, and then I would keep grinding Zen for this ship. But that didn't happen, so oh well. As far as tier 5 ships to choose with this coupon they did give us, it's kind of a tough decision because none of the ships are really useful in combat. You know, like, I love the Excelsior. I think it's such a cool ship. But there's no reason I would use a tier 5 Excelsior in PvP when there's so many tier 6 ships. Or if anything, I would use some of that EC that I have and I would buy fleet ship modules and I'd buy like the tier 6 fleet version of this if that's what I really wanted to fly. And I could, you know, I could budget my resources a little bit better by doing that. So on the other hand, some ships in this list, the consoles can be used on any other ship. So like, here's an example. The Armitage escort carrier has this really cool console that shoots torpedoes out, point defense. You can only use that console on the Akira and Akira type ships. So that basically counts this ship out for me because I'm not going to use the ship and I can't use the console, and tier 5 ships don't have traits, so it's like, you know, what's the point? But on the other hand, let me scroll all the way to the bottom because I already purchased it last year. So last year's T5 coupon, I bought the T5 Nebula. And the reason for that was the Tachyon Detection Grid console, which is really, really effective against stealth and helps out your whole team and everything. But the only ship that can use that console is the Nebula. So Another long-term plan is to use fleet modules to buy the Tier 6 Nebula fleet version, slot this console from the Tier 5, and use that as kind of a team support build. But I think this year I'm going to buy the Raid Maker, and the reason for that is the console, the multi-dimensional graviton shield. Basically, it repels people that are close to you, which works for getting out of, psi spam and all that stuff. In fact, I mean, why debate? I'll just buy it right now. All right. I can just show you exactly what that console does. Right, so let's go up to space again real quick. Right, so let me put this in place of the shared processing integration. And let it come off cooldown. So basically what this console does is it repels anything within 5 kilometers of you with this big purple bubble, gives you kinetic damage resistance, immunity to movement debuffs, and I know the tooltip says for 1 second, but the console lasts 20 seconds, it just refreshes every 1 second, so kind of a old school display bug. So not only do you get immunity to movement debuffs like Chronoton torpedoes and Plasma Storm slows and Gravity Well slows and all that stuff, it also reflects kinetic damage back to you, or well, back to your attacker. And the amount that it reflects is heavily based on your aux power. So since I'm already using the enhanced induction coils, if I hit that 110 aux power, I reflect 2 times incoming kinetic damage back to the target. So it's basically like an old school feedback pulse, but for kinetic damage. And I have seen this used to great effect before. I already had this console on my main account. That's what I used the Tier 5 coupon last year on my main account for. And yeah, I mean, it's really powerful. Basically, if someone lines up, if someone's trying to do a torpedo vapor or something like that, and they line up a shot and they shoot you during this 20-second window, it basically instant shots them back. Because the kinetic damage has 50% shield penetration as well. So pretty cool console. It's a little bit more effective on a science build. Like if I put this on the Scryer build on this character where I'm basically always at 130 aux power, it's even more powerful on that build. But pretty decent console to have available. I'm not sure if I'll use it all the time. I might leave it down here in my like maybes gear list that I am always changing. But because of its short cooldown, it can be really effective. And basically, if I go into a match and I see, oh, on the other team, there's a torp boat, I'll just, I'll turn, I'll evasive away, and I'll stick this console on, I'll turn back around and fly head-to-head with them, and when they fire the torpedo, you just activate it. And they can have already fired the torpedo before you activate it, and by then it's too late, because the reflection damage is instant, there's no travel time. But a torpedo does have travel time as it flies to you, so you have like a whole second or two window to activate this console. So you don't even need to be like super quick about it. Like, like with feedback pulse, you had to activate it almost immediately in order to make the best of it. This one, you can kind of like watch the torpedo coming at you and then lazily activate it and reflect the damage back anyway. So pretty cool console to have. So anyway, I'm excited to get my hands on the Somerville. I guess I'll have to do another video, and I do have a couple of other builds that I have been working on this character. There's the, I still have the Zal build to kind of talk about, but it's not very different from this Walker build that I already showed you. I mean, most of these builds, you probably, if you've watched this channel, you can probably put 2 and 2 together and pretty much figure out what I'm going to tell you. Because it's all the same stuff. It's not that it's really not that difficult to put together these PvP builds. So, and I did record a video in the Nova, but kind of forgot to cut it together and upload it. But that one's also no surprise. It's colony consoles and beam overload, and then it just has a grab well on it. But you could do viral Matrix 3. That'd be kind of cool. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which probably will be the skill tree, or I may do a video on the nebula, because since people still maybe might have T5 coupons, that's one I'd recommend getting with the T5 coupon while you still have it. So I'll do a video where I talk about that ship a little bit in more detail as well, over on my main account where the build is more fully featured. Oh, that reminds me. One other thing, and I'm waiting for a better sale, but if I don't get the Somerville for Spore Infused, the Gamma Vanguard Starter Pack, a lot of times this is 35% off, which makes it 1300 Zen. And the ship that comes in it, this Tier 6 Jem'Hadar Vanguard ship, comes with Team Synergy as the starship trait. So I could, I mean, right now if I wanted to, I could buy the fleet modules and this ship and put together a pretty effective support build right now. So that's maybe something I might do in the future too. It's really mainly just trying to figure out how best to spend these resources, because this character already does so much. I guess it'd be cool to add a healer or support build. So, all right, thanks for watching. Bye.